and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good morning. For this Carver County Board of Commissioners work session today, we're going to talk about a lot of fun things as we head into and begin to end our budget talks. So anyway, item 2.1, we are going to have the annual report from Carver County Mental Health Local Advisory Council. Good morning.
Doesn't look like we have the right slide deck. Yeah. I'm not the budget.
Oh, come on. You can wing it.
I'll switch with you.
I don't know if I'd take this topic either.
Oh, true.
I got my own budget to deal with. I don't want to deal with this one too.
That's right, you do.
There we go. Okay. Is my microphone on?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Chairman, members of the commissioners, my name is Kayla Pasco. I'm the chair of the Mental Health Local Advisory Committee for Carver County. And this is the annual report. You guys saw me last year. I'm here again this year. And we've got a lot of good information for everyone this year. So as a reminder, we're a statutory organization under Minnesota Statute 245-4875 for children and 245-466 subdivision 5 for adults. You guys have to listen to me and take into effect what I say. You don't have to do anything I say, but you do have to listen to me, which is why I'm here. So it's our job to review mental health in the county. We're supposed to identify any unmet needs and present them to the commissioners for consideration as they plan their budgets and their mental health plans for the county. This year we finished 9, actually at this point it's more like 11 monthly committee meetings. We've had 3 new members since September of last year, so thank you for appointing them. They've been wonderful. And we have monthly community discussions and presentations on local mental health topics. This includes the members of HHS and people who do mental health here for the county. It also includes partners in the community and nonprofit organizations that work in this space in Carver County. Our goal is to find actual gaps, not gaps that the county has, or perceived gaps, but actual gaps in the system that can't be met by other organizations that are already in place. We celebrated Mental Health Awareness Month with the community. We had a very nice presentation from the NAMI organization, and we have collaborated with the State Advisory Council and their work group. And of course, there's always the public health comprehensive mental health needs assessment that happens. You guys asked us last year, and we've done it again this year. We need to identify those key unmet mental health needs and then explore both short and long-term solutions for some of those issues. In order to assess those needs, we partnered with Carver County Public Health and the Mental Health Department to create a randomized community health survey. This was all done through HHS, so thank you very much, Heather. You did a wonderful job on that. We had interviews and listening sessions with clients with lived experience, again, through HHS, all of the surveying client care and mental health chemical-related data. This was all things that were done by staff and then presented to us as part of our planning and decision-making process. This is what they discovered. So the mental health data tells us that about 1 to 4, most people have about 1 to 4 days where they don't have good mental health. About a third are always good, and really that kind of troubling category is about 10% have 10 or more days a month where they don't feel that their mental health is good. Since COVID, about 3/4 of people-ish have had the same mental health since COVID, and about equal parts have improved or worsened. So we're kind of static, obviously not individual static, but as a community, fairly static when it comes to mental health since COVID. And about 20% of people sought mental health help from a professional last year. This is where it really matters for us. Why did you not seek help if you did not seek help? A lot of it is things that the county we can't do. This is insurance problems. So the deductible is too high, insurance not accepted, insurance doesn't cover, no insurance, you get the idea. As you continue to go down, though, we start to run into things that we've seen as a board that we've seen multiple times. And the big one here is that transportation, no appointments, care is too far away. These are things that we hear constantly as we're talking to people in the system. Accepted community acceptance. So we talked last year a little bit about this, but really that strength of community, that feeling like you're part of community, that lack of isolation is something that really drives mental health in general. And we're seeing that about 79% feel fully accepted, about 16% do not feel accepted, and 5% don't feel accepted at all by the community. So that social connectedness, again, it's not an individual issue. This is really how happy you are, how well fulfilled you feel, how strong your mental health is deeply tied to your community. This is part of what's driving, during COVID, what drove the rural mental health crisis. People were truly isolated in rural communities, and we kind of saw that in the data over the last few years following COVID. And it's this loneliness and isolation that is driving all of this. So you can see in 2023, the Surgeon General showed a direct connection. There's a bunch of statistics here, but really what it comes down to is loneliness and isolation increases the mortality rate. It has serious impacts on health and has serious impacts on mental health in particular. So what we did as a community is, or as a board, as an LAC, is that we talked to people. We talked to the people on our committee. You guys have done a wonderful job of selecting the members of our committee because we have people with lived experience and we have mental health providers as part of this board. So they have that experience. They understand what's happening. In addition to those people and their feedback, we also again spoke with various organizations throughout the county. We have a normed question sheet. So we sat down a couple of years ago and said, what do we really want to know from these community organizations when they come in and talk to us? And it's things like, you know, where do you see weaknesses in your system? What data would you like? If you had unlimited resources, what would you change? These are questions that we always ask, and it gives us a better idea of where they see gaps in the system that we may not see from the county side. And we talk to them. We kind of, our year is kind of divided into two parts. So the first half of the year is planning for this, having our conversations about what we want to present to you. The second half of the year is data gathering from those community organizations. And so then we go ahead and map the strengths and gaps in the system, and we vote on the priorities that we think are going to have the greatest impact. So what we've found is working. Overall, people are pretty happy with the Carver County mental health system. If they have lived mental health issues, they seem to be fairly well served by the community systems that we have, and that we know for a fact that personal relationships are the most important part when it comes to mental health. The gaps that we discovered are transportation. This is our most cited, biggest gap, biggest need. We hear this all the time. And as you guys know, there are issues at the state level that may lead to decreased transportation opportunities in Carver County. So I always put this out there. It's one of our, so I'm on the city council in Carver. It's actually one of our legislative priorities every year. They want to take away Southwest Prime. They want to go, the legislature wants to consolidate all Metro Transit into the Metro Transit Authority. The Metro Transit Authority has stated that they will not cut essential services. Their definition of essential services is fixed route buses, specifically to downtown. They do not include Southwest Prime in that calculation. And as you guys know, and I know you know this because we've had those discussions with you at the city level, Southwest Prime is how Carver County gets its transportation services. So cutting that is going to cause some really serious problems for those people who are accessing mental health services in the county. There's also concerns about provider turnover. And we hear both sides. Some people think there's too much virtual care. Some people think that there's not enough. Unfortunately, there's not a happy medium in today's world about what that looks like with all of the gaps that we have in providers nationwide, not just in Minnesota and not just in Carver County. There's also stigma, isolation, and gaps in understanding, issues with availability and reliability, and then, of course, sensory-friendly and occupational therapy-style activities. Some other gaps in services that have been identified, you can see here. These are things that have been identified by the surveys and the staff. These are not the official recommendations of the LAC, but you can see trauma-focused therapy, autism care, eating disorders, residential and in-home services, and of course, always the psychiatric provider shortages and limited beds at the state hospital. Again, a lot of these are not things that we can fix at the county level, but they're ongoing problems that we have in the mental health. The suggested improvements, expanded support groups, increased transportation options, crisis intervention services, older adults. But these are our recommendations. So, Mental Health Local Advisory Committee, this year after sitting down and talking to everybody, the theme is we have to make sure that we have access to our services. That was the biggest theme that came out of this year's specific conversations. So we want to start out by thanking you guys. You have always done a really good job of making sure that the community as a whole has what it needs for mental health. But these are the things that we see going forward. And interestingly enough, it's not necessarily places we have gaps right now. More of what we're seeing, more of what we're wanting to highlight is places where we see gaps that may open up in the future. So the big one is continued support for telehealth options for clients. As transportation becomes more difficult to get in Carver County, we're going to be seeing patients who need more telehealth options. And in a lot of cases, this involves things like grants for devices that allow them to access it. So that's a program that's been supported in the past, and it's something that we would like to see continue to be supported in the future. Additionally, you guys have got a big building project coming up here just across the hall. Part of that, we see that we would really like to see a dedicated mental health treatment space as part of that plan. Chaska-Chanhassen is the largest space need. That's where most of the clients for mental health in Carver County come from. And as of right now, they have to go to Waconia to get their service. So having something local to them means that they're more able to access it, and they're going to have more opportunities to do that. And then finally, again, you guys have done a great job making improvements to the First Street Center. It's helped a lot, but there's obviously improvements to be made going forward as well. I know it's in the plan a few years down the road, but the First Street Center was not designed to be a mental health facility. It was a telecom building, and it's now being used to treat patients, and there are issues with accessibility. There are issues with making sure that they're getting the best possible care in that facility. And while it serves well and the improvements have been incredibly helpful, more improvements can obviously be made. And then community engagement is always important as well. So these are the things that we have recommended as an MHLAC. I am happy to take any questions that you may have. I've got everything. I've got the list of everything we talked about, all of our options that we talked about, as well as any other themes or community comments that we talked about in our sessions as well. So.
Councilwoman Pasco, thank you very much. And thanks for bringing up that Southwest Transit, very important. One of those little underlying things that we battle every day.
Yep.
And, but anybody have any questions?
Yes, how long have you been fighting the Southwest, the killing of Southwest? As a legislator, you've been doing that for about 30 years, haven't you? They've been trying to kill it.
At least.
Yeah. It got too close for comfort last year, I have to say.
Well, I don't know if it got that close, but I don't think anybody watching at home probably understands what we're talking about. But I think you said it well. The Met Council wants to. The people who are about $2 billion over on a light rail project and about 10 years behind on the light rail project want to take over our local bus service, and we don't think that's a pretty good idea. So how's that for a
good explanation?
Anybody else? Commissioner Fahey.
Yes.
Thank you for being here. Great presentation. You want to go back a couple of slides? Keep going when you talk about the survey.
The provider survey or the listening sessions?
No, the prior survey. Just keep going back into your pie charts there. For example, can you tell me about the randomized adult community health survey? How many people participated? When was it done, et cetera?
I promised I wouldn't throw back to staff, but I wasn't in charge of the survey, so I have to throw back to staff on this one. Melissa's got it.
So this was sort of a
You have to
Come-
come.
You gotta come to the
Come up,
microphone.
Melissa.
Yeah. Open meeting laws, Melissa. You should know this by now.
We'd like to hear you too.
Great, thank you. I will pull it up. Part of the adult mental health needs assessment included a randomized mailed survey, and I have it, I'll pull it up quickly. Oops. Okay, here it is. So it was a random sample of Carver County residents. And here's the number. It was mailed out to Carver County residents November and December of 2025. There were 452 responses, so it was a statistically valid sample at 95% confidence level, plus or minus 5%.
Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate it. And then just one other question, Kayla, and that's
Yeah.
towards the end of your presentation. On the slide where you talk about the strategies.
The recommendations, the improvements.
The support strategies, sorry. You were just
Support
there.
strategies. Let's be this way.
Yes.
This one?
Oh, you were just, that
That one. Okay.
one. Got it?
Yes.
The communities of belonging,
Yes.
are they involved in this? Are they supportive?
Yes, they are part of all of this. That kind of falls under the community engagement. So we want to have continued support for that. And that has been very helpful. We've tried this last year to kind of work with them a little bit for our mental health month, awareness month. We've been working on that. It's a separate organization from what we do on the MHLAC, but obviously it all plays into that. And it is an important part of that community engagement and building those communities.
And currently, those communities of belonging, I know the Cologne one is very active.
Yes.
Are the Chask and Chanhassen groups very active?
Are they active? Are they sufficiently active?
I think Jess.
Fairly. Staff says fairly.
Those are the only three currently
Yes. Yeah.
in Carver County, so, thank you.
We actually, our Mental Health Awareness Month event was held at the Cologne Community Center this year. We had a pretty good turnout for it, so.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Uderman.
Thank you for being here. I think you mentioned some of the staff in the room, but behind our staff members are even more people, and they live it every single day. And just showing up to a meeting is probably not the answer for a lot of people that are experiencing mental health challenges and so on and so forth. It's super complex. Communities of Belonging has been a great effort, but it's the people that are experiencing it in an emergency that they're not going to look for a meeting. And so you brought a lot of good things to the table. I think the number one you keyed in on was transportation. The board put money in, for those that don't know, to explore what it looked like to address transportation for people's own vehicles. Same thing with this stuff too. It really becomes a funding issue. And we recognize that the state has lowered the reimbursement rate for mental health, not because they don't care about people that are experiencing mental health, but because it's so significantly costly. And so in the spirit of solutions, it's like, okay, we got to figure out where is that funding, especially when we're in a budget challenging times, right? Because the state's putting a pinch on you. We don't have those resources available. So when you're talking about transportation, one of the things that has come across our desks is the potential of partnering with Southwest Transit to expand. And the board has been supportive of that and put a lot of money into exploring that in different ways, not just for mental health, but for medical transportation to get to the grocery store, people that are aging, people that are disabled, et cetera. And so I just ponder, because I know that there's some buckets for active transportation, if we could potentially look into accelerating what Eden Prairie is doing in partnership with Southwest Transit, which is autonomous, where you can push a button, the vehicle can come out, grab somebody, and take them where they need to go. And so I just offer that as a solution because there are dollars associated with that. And sometimes active transportation, we don't necessarily use those dollars fully.
Yeah.
And so problem, solution, funding, right?
Yeah.
So those are some thoughts to throw up. Also, from a win standpoint, just to share with the group, I like the communities of belonging. I know Commissioner Fahey, myself, others have been at that when they had all the cities. I think every city in the county was represented for communities of belonging at Paradise Commons. Wasn't all that well attended, It was probably 100 people. When you look at 114,000 in population, that may sound like a big number for some people for a meeting. It's not a whole lot when it comes to reach, but there's the effort to be had there. But a word we hear a lot here is upstream. And so one of the things as it relates to upstream that I've seen is good, and maybe it's something that we can share as a best practice, is in youth coaching, they're starting to integrate mental health into training and preparing the leaders, if you will. So train the trainer so that you can get to the team. And it's interesting because a lot of times when we talk to some of these coaches, it's like, well, we got to throw and we got to hit and we got to field and we got to do all these other things. We don't have time for it. And what I've come to understand is it's an overlay. And so I think as we move upstream, that's a good example of how leagues are helping prepare the coaches that's available to them for them to get to the younger generations.
Yeah,
Because
on that point, about, I think 2 months ago, we actually had an organization come in and speak with us that's what they do. They
Yep.
do mental health for teens, particularly in sports, and
Yep.
reaching out to those coaches, so.
and not just sports, but other activities. And then finally, your point about First Street Center, it's on my radar as well. And I know that we've offered some suggestions and solutions. That building was platted in 59, built in like late 60s, early 70s, never intended to be the useful life that it is now. And I think that that's next up on the docket once we get done with the 600 building is to figure out creative funding and how we can make that happen. So thank you for being here. Thanks for your thoughts. One last thing I would say is how can the county and cities work together? Because you say feet on the ground and you're in your role as the city as well. How can we move into the city organizations where you're sometimes the closest, you're the first call when somebody wants something done, or you're the closest to it. It's not just about water and sewer and taxes. It's also about the human infrastructure. Are you seeing any best practices and things that are happening in the city of Carver or other cities that we can glean from and learn as a board?
Yeah. We were actually just talking, one of my favorite things about being in Carver is our work sessions are done around a table. We love that. Work sessions are supposed to be a conversation. So that's my big, and we talked about how at the new center, at the new building, you guys might have that opportunity. And it just changes the tone of something like this, being able to have an actual conversation as opposed to feeling like you have to be rigid and formal has worked really, really well for us. I'll have to think harder about other things that have come up, but that was just something we talked about as a group before the meeting even started. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's be careful. I was platted in 1959. And platted. And I'm in pretty good form, I might say about myself. Commissioner Anderson.
All right, Kayla, thank you so much for continuing to be our chair for that. I know that you've had a lot of things going on in your life, so I appreciate you doing that. And I also just want to appreciate the staff that are in the room. I won't make you talk, but Melissa and Stephanie and Heather and all you put into this. So first of all, thanks for that. I did want to kind of touch a little bit on a couple of things. One is I do echo the comment about it would be great if we could have something here in this building regarding mental health. And it is, if transportation is our biggest issue, then trying to get it closer to where the majority of the people live would be helpful. So that's something I'm not sure if that's on the radar or in the plans.
So for those of you who are interested, in January or February, we had the Sheriff's Department come out and present on mental health policing. And the statistics show, and obviously we don't have statistics on Chanhassen because the Sheriff's Department doesn't do Chaska.
No,
Chaska.
they don't Chaska. Yeah.
They do Chanhassen, not Chaska. So we don't have Chaska statistics. But Chanhassen is the #1 call for mental health in the county. Number 2, I believe, was Victoria. 3 was Watertown, and 4 was Waconia. I've since talked to Watertown. They have a group home in Watertown that is a very high call rate for both medical and mental health issues. That's why their numbers have been driven up so high. The city is aware of that situation. So, you can throw Watertown out of the statistics there if you want. But we're looking, obviously, Chanhassen, likely Chaska, Victoria, and Waconia as our biggest mental health calls for Carver County from the Sheriff's Department.
And as Commissioner Uterman has mentioned, I believe mental health is an upstream activity for the most part, especially with our youth. And so I recently came back from, I sit on the Association of Minnesota Counties Board, recently came back from that strategic planning session, and really that organization is looking at more focus on children's mental health and how we do that. One of the issues, as we continue to talk about, is beds. But the problem is when there have been facilities that have created more beds, there aren't enough staff to support those facilities. So we talk a lot about beds, but the biggest problem is there aren't enough staff. There aren't enough people
Yeah.
to do that work. We have hired, and Heather, I'm sorry, I'm going to call on you, but we have hired a new psychologist, psychiatrist. We have hired someone. That position was open years and years and years. So that's been a big win for us, for our services in Carver County. And back to the insurance issue, I recently became aware of, and people who use our services, we bill if that's an option. And recently became aware of how much of that has been turned down by insurance. So we suffer from that as a provider for mental health as well. And that continues to be, as you would say, a sticky wicket that is really, really difficult to solve.
And that's across the board. You know, last year we moved the mental health crisis team from in-house to Canvas Health. They've been doing an amazing job, but that caused insurance problems when it comes to our co-responders and what we can bill for with our co-responders and how important that program is. And so it's amazing how much of our mental health gaps we run into are tied back to that insurance problem.
Insurance issue,
Yeah.
yeah. And so if we have anyone who can help with that, would be really awesome.
Yeah.
So, but again, thank you for all your work. Thank you for leading I'm just a liaison, so I'm actually not a board member, but thank you for leading that group with such professionalism and dignity. We really appreciate all the work you've done.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Anderson's been a great asset. We've loved having her join us for our meetings, and we always put her on the spot. I always do staff updates at the
Okay.
end, and so she's always tries to come in with something. Sometimes there's not a lot, but we do make sure that you guys are heard on our commission as well.
Being put on the spot is kind of our job, isn't it? It's kind of what we do. So, all good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else? Seeing none, Kayla, thank you for all you do on this important issue.
Thank you,
and,
Commissioner. I appreciate it.
We're behind you.
Yeah, we're doing the best we can.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I see Mr. Hemsey heading towards the podium because we're going to talk about his budget, county administrator's recommended preliminary 2027 budget and levy.
I think it's our budget, O-U-R, our budget.
Nice try.
And it is, what a team effort to lift this one up and try and figure it out, so I appreciate the work that's gone in. I'm going to give a real high-level brief introduction this morning. I'll do that summary, and then Dave will dive into the remainder. As you saw in your packet, a lot of detail, and it's complex, so I have a tough job here of trying to simplify the story and bring this puzzle together, and I'll do my best, but I know you may have some questions, so please ask those. But I would go back to the team effort. Thank you, board, for the multiple opportunities and input, the thoughtful discussion over the multiple months here. It is a long cycle. It goes all the way back to the spring before that, even if you think about the various efforts that are in place, like our legislative priority document, for example, and the strategic plan that we did in, was that February, March, May? Yeah, May. All of those things are real critical then to help me, help other staff get this in the shape and form it is today. And of course, we're talking about the preliminary levy and budget, and we'll be coming back next week to ask for your formal adoption of the preliminary levy, which is that ceiling of the levy, and it can come down, but it can't go up, just as a reminder. So again, back to the teamwork. I would say every budget's different, and having done over 3 decades of budgeting, this one seems as hard as any one I've ever dealt with. And so to me, it is so important then to have these different perspectives come in to try and shape it because of the degree of difficulty, if nothing else. And I think you see that, you feel it with this budget as it comes through. So I'm going to, again, try and simplify this, but to finish that, how did we get here? Thought the division directors in particular, their staff, really instrumental in getting to where we are. And you can see that in these solutions and the complexity of the multiple solutions that are in the packet. I need to mention Mary Kay too, because she keeps us all honest, gets the numbers in shape. So a real critical piece of the puzzle. Budget pressures. So I have 3 slides. First is budget pressures. The other 2 are strategies. And as I thought about the budget pressures, I put them into 4 different, I'd call them buckets. Where's that pressure coming from? And likely no surprises here. You felt it, as we all have. Top of the list, top of mind, are the state and federal cost shifts. Now, I put this in context of 27 and beyond, but it's really, this has been going on for multiple years. Quite frankly, perhaps since my career started 30 plus years ago. It always seems like, especially at the county level, we're facing these cost shifts, burden shifts, trying to figure out, how can we take care of it because nobody else can. In the end, we seem to figure out a way. All those things have been present, but not as evident as the past few years. And certainly when you look at year 26, 7, and 8, as we package up the budget and try and explain the story, which I'm trying to do here, those state and federal cost shifts requiring an estimated 1.5% levy surcharge in 27, that's in the budget packet, right? Or the recommendation. And as a reminder, every percent used to be 700, now it's 800. Was it 700? 750. Now it's 800, right? So every percent is $800,000. Keep things in perspective in levy. So in the recommendation, there's 1.5 in 27, and then a difficult one to predict, and budgets are always a prediction game, right? But 28, we think there's going to be another 2.5% coming in 28. And Dave has the details on how that fits together. But the high level picture again, if you think back to 26, 27, 28, that's that 6%. So we had talked last year about 222, this levy surcharge coming from the state saying, you shall do these things, and by the way, you shall do these other things, and we're not going to fund them like we should. That's the real kind of sort of bottom line. So 222, that's 6% over a 3-year period. That's troubling, right? That if you look at that over 3 years, it's almost $5 million in levy that's coming at us. That is, again, is really the start of the troubling budgetary process, and one of the reasons that some of these recommendations just, quite frankly, aren't real pretty and require these difficult decisions. We're going to be working on all these, and I have strategies, but that right out of the chute is troubling. I would say number 2, in terms of scale, is even a more difficult challenge, just given the fact that we're in the service business. We have the employees providing that service that is by far the lion's share of our budget. So no surprise, that's where the pressure is going to come from. So that is right in there as the top concern. Of course, we always talk about that. It's not just wages and benefits, but it's also benefits. I think we've done a nice job managing health insurance, for example. I'd say as good as others have, if not better. But it definitely is right on top of there, top of the list. And if you look at, again, keep this in a longer range perspective and get into the crystal ball. As we look into 28, we've heard from the sheriff. He thinks we need, I think he put out 3 FTEs, perhaps, 3 dispatchers. There's a core function for you. Chaska Library is coming. How do we manage that? And there are multiple other areas that have staffing pressures that I think are going to be starting to, again, reveal themselves. This particular budgetary process, given the pressures my direction was no requests unless they're core mandated requests, and you'll see that in the recommendation. But those other pressures will, again, they're not going to go away, right? So I think, of these top four, that's just the biggest challenge that we have. And then, of course, inflation, we all know about that. We experience it in our daily lives, and if not, well beyond into our operations here. Inflation's been tamed a little bit from some soaring inflation not too long ago. It's averaging around 3.2% for the past year. However, you need to remember, if you look at how that accumulates over 5 years, that's 22% accumulation. And while we've seen some relief, not much. So in other words, things go up 22% and they stay there relatively, right? So that's part of this challenge, is how do we manage that without that relief? And that's real. And you will again see that in the recommendations. And then the last pressure that I'd list, the last bucket, would be, of course, capital. We're just talking about the need for a new facility. I think you're in agreement as a board, we need a new facility. 1965 building, not quite as old as the mental health facility, but I'd argue it's in at least as bad a shape as that, perhaps worse shape than the mental health First Street Center. But those one-time capital needs, how do we manage those? And I'll get into the strategies in a minute. How do we manage an $82 million bill that we know is coming? How do we prepare for that? How do we stick to that plan? How do we manage the other big one? There's multiple needs. These are the two big ones. How do we manage the Chaska Library? While I think it's a great partnership that the cities do the bricks and mortar, we still get stuck with a pretty big bill. Beyond operations, right? That's probably the biggest bill, is the staffing side. But you also have the library books and shelving that is estimated at $4.4 million. So those are the four big pressure points, it's great to put them out there, but then the question is, what do you do about it? How do we manage this? So as Dave goes through then the various numbers, these strategies will come up time and time again, but they're core fundamental ways that we've approached our budgetary process and ultimately the budget recommendations that are packaged up. There are 8 of them that I've listed. So 2 slides. First and foremost, I would say the most challenging, most difficult is the service level, right? We're in the service business. How do we determine and ultimately where does the board land on the level of services that we provide? So addressing those mandated needs with a review and then prioritizing those and balancing those mandated services against the discretionary services. Extremely difficult in especially the county business, where the majority of those, if not all of those discretionary services, are extremely popular, right? So that's a very hard thing to do. As a reminder, we did, again, refresh the list of discretionary services. We had talked about that in various formats, including the strategic planning session that we had. So that's still out there. If you need me to resend it to you, I'll do that. I just revisited it yesterday, sort of as a check back to go, is this in, how's this look, compared to that list? And I would say I feel, quite frankly, uncomfortable. It should make you feel uncomfortable that when we start talking about, these difficult cuts. It's just the nature of these. But then you go back to that list and you go, well, the rest of these on this list would make me feel even more uncomfortable, right? So that's the real challenge, and I think your role is extremely difficult, as compared to my role or staff role. But in the end, that really is what many of these choices do boil down to. Is what are your priorities? Number 2, an easier one, I would say, if we can find external revenue, that's a great solution, right? Plug it in. It's not as debatable, I would say. The numbers are somewhat debatable, but an easy plug and play to go, wow, it's not just about cutting. Maybe we can come up with some new revenue. So thank you for the staff that work on that. It just doesn't happen. For example, in our jail, $450,000 more. And keep in mind, budgeting is evolving process, so we start with a request and we move into a recommendation. So that we had an original number that was plugged into the budget, for example, for that example, with jail revenue, and I don't recall what it was. Was it around $1 million? 300, that's all it was? I was going way back to the old days. Okay, so the sheriff plugged in, here's my request, $300,000. As this process evolved and we looked closer at our U.S. Marshal contract and then the trends, we always do trend analysis, my recommendation is to bump that up because of what we think was really going to happen in year 2027. So there's another 450 in the budget, so almost $750,000, right? I always check with Mary Kay. Is my number right?
I think of the police contract. And
Oh, both of them. Okay, all right. All right. But the story is still true here. You know, we want to make sure we're maximizing revenue. There are efforts, not only with that particular issue, multiple efforts going on. Heather's got all sorts of ways to go at that issue and challenges related to it. But that's, again, back to strategies. Those are all behind the scenes. Another example would be investment income, as we talked about that topic in past sessions. We want to make sure we're maximizing our investments without too much risk, right? It's always that balance. We have related policies, but in particular, this last cycle, we've looked at, can we make sure that we have the cash available to maximize? So we're collecting from others, the state of Minnesota, for example, and we're doing that with Public Works and making sure we maximize then our ability to gain interest on our money. So I think that additional amount toward the tail end was a $250,000 kind of number. So those kind of things add up quickly and are mixed into the recommendations. The third one of my favorites, you hear me talk about it all the time. I didn't know how to exactly label this. I'm calling it fiscal sustainability. We talk a lot about make sure your base funding is in place to address ongoing expenditures. Be wary and cautious against spending one-time money for ongoing things. And there is no other evolving story that tells that tale better than Dakota County. You're probably hearing from your colleagues, your sister-in-law. You're hearing the challenges that they're facing, the multiple layoffs that they have. I sent a text to Commissioner, Board Chair Workman. They're talking about maybe getting their bond rating downgraded. I think they're AAA. Have you heard that? That's all alarm bells, right? Why is that? If you look at their cash balance, the chart literally goes off the cliff, right? So we don't want to make those same mistakes. I think Anoka County a few years ago went down the same path, and they've since made some corrections. And both of those stories align in the sense that they cause these spikes then. These taxes go up because of the recovery that's needed in a shorter term, because of the exponential problem. Now, I would admit there is some one-time money that is applied to ongoing problems. If you look at the sort of the inside baseball in this budget, however, we're proposing a solution quickly. So we're flipping over into 28 and saying, you know, we're going to take care of this now. We know it's going to be a number in 28, and here's what's needed in 2028. Part of that is built into the one of the first issues that I laid out, this mandated cost shift, that 1.5 and 2.5. You know, arguably, maybe we need 2 in 27, right? Part of that strategy, there's a method to the approach, which is we're hopeful that 2028 maybe isn't 2.5. Right? Maybe that comes down, and maybe we can help force that to come down through our legislative efforts and other approaches, right? The fourth item on this slide, capital needs, maintaining those long-term financing plans. I would say that it's tempting to get off track. If you think about the government center, that is a $450 additional allocation that's been over a 5-year period. I think Dave will lay that out too. I think we have 3 years left. It's tempting to go, well, let's just maybe not do that for this following cycle, right? Well, then you don't have to come up with a 450, you can apply it. That's not what we've done here. You know, we're we're very diligent about staying on track, because we know, as was just mentioned in the previous topic, it's not only the government center, it's the First Street Center, right? The library's coming. There's multiple other pieces that if you get off track, all those things get log jammed up. So one more slide. For me, and of course, personnel management, it's one of the key strategies, very challenging, multiple faceted when you look at the various options, solutions that are out there. I listed many of them on the slide here, soft hiring freezes. I review all the requisitions that come through, and I make sure that I'm comfortable that not only the position in its current form, shape, it makes sense to move forward with it, but perhaps has a thorough enough review been done to make sure we couldn't do that job differently. So all that's been going on for years, I believe, at least a couple of years, if not more than that. Behind the scenes, vacancy eliminations, there's a number of those in the budget, not perfect, in terms of just taking those and saying, well, we're going to remove those. They're definitely, it's a budgetary solution. However, built into the package, if you see a vacancy eliminated, there's strategy behind it to offset the need for whatever that vacancy was going to do, right? So you might see, for example, some sort of a reorg number to realign existing staff if a position was taken out, to make sure the duties are covered, perhaps by applying the skill set of this existing staff in a different way to make sure that duties are covered. And I mentioned the workforce realignments, that's a good example of it. We've already had in place, and it's been successful, reduced work weeks, voluntary furloughs. There's a couple pretty big numbers. I'm not going to say those exactly, but I know one's can you help me with that?
They both have 100,000.
Two?
There's two of them.
Two equal 100?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, both equal 100.
So 100,000 budgeted in the package. Outsourcing, talked a lot about that as an intentional strategy. It's helpful to reduce the overhead burden of existing staff, among other opportunities that come along with outsourcing, but carefully looking at that. I would note, if you look at some of the specific items, you've probably heard about some of these already, outsourcing custodial work, very carefully thought through, making sure that the work will be performed by the vendor in an as good or better manner at a lower rate. So all that's been thoughtfully vetted through the process and is in the package. I would say those are very difficult cuts because those are existing staff that are impacted. All of those kinds of things ultimately produce some savings that can be plugged into the budget package. Operational improvements, looking at the various different, I would label that as the way we're providing services. A good example there would be electronic access in the library system. And I would say that there is pressure being placed on our library system, if nothing else, through some holes of positions, and that's that soft freeze, right? So holding back some vacancies and a strategic way to try and determine how does our long-term library model, what's it look like long-term? How are we providing those services? And I think a big part of the solution is electronic access. So providing more access for our citizens to use that service, perhaps with a lower ultimate cost for staff, right? So that's behind that whole effort. Not perfect and not without its controversy, but it's definitely an automation improvement that is very intentionally done to help offset ongoing budgetary challenges. Intergovernmental collaboration, great example there would be the Three Rivers Park District contract. Most of these on the second slide, don't immediately show up, at least full scale, in a one-year budgetary cycle, and that's a real good example. The Three Rivers Park contract, we think that over a period of time we'll capture more and more savings. In a one-year cycle, I think we built in around $100,000 of savings into the 27 cycle. So multiple efforts. And I could list numerous other ones like the Scale Health Insurance Partnership we're working on. Multiple other efforts to try and create more efficient and cost-effective services. And finally, state, going back to the beginning, a state and federal role reset. That really, to me, is one of the, again, more broad overall problematic challenges that we're seeing evolve more recently over even the past few years. When you think about, again, I stated over 3 decades, it's always been there. Over the past few years, though, it's never been more evident that the roles are dramatically changing. And the best example would be when the federal government is now asking us to pick up benefits, right, SNAP benefits. The benefit cost burden onto us, that is not typical. I don't remember when that ever occurred, but for the last few years. And that's a relative, it's a big one, but there are other big ones that are potentially coming our way. And Heather can provide more insight. But that whole role issue is, to me, it's going to blow up the budget, quite frankly. And back to our legislative strategy, I think others are paying more and more attention to this in the local government business and counties in particular. I think we really need to pay close attention to make sure that doesn't throw things off track. Because behind the math then is this pressure on property taxes. So property taxes, I don't think were intended to cover those kind of benefits, right? So that whole role reset and then trying to shift the decisions that come not only out of our state capital, but our federal level, that's a real important strategy as we move ahead. So that's the high level. Unless there's questions for me, Mr. Chair, I'll have Dave dive into the detail.
Okay, David?
And actually, he's going to back up a little bit. He's going to go look at this year first, right?
Thank you, Administrator Hemsey, and good morning, Board Chair and Board members. As Dave mentioned, I'll start with our 2026, our second quarter review. We do this strategically. We meet with the finance meets with all the division directors quarterly, and then we provide an update to the board on what we've heard. This one is especially helpful because not only tells us where we're at for 2026, it can give us some ideas on trends and good news, bad news about that we need to start accommodating for in 2027. You'll see various parts of this discussion in what we've seen in 2026, how it's been included in the 2027 recommendation. A high level overall, revenues, expenditures are relatively stable. There's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of numbers, but overall we're still maintain we're in still pretty good shape. The good news, really good news, the biggest news is Health and Human Services. The DNMC did not meet criteria. Good news that that cost is we no longer have that. You can see that is reflected in our 2027 budget recommendation as a big number. It's that $900,000 cost for one individual that we've been struggling with. So that's good news in the second quarter. That's going to roll into the 2027 budget recommendation. The opposite, but not as significant, is our juvenile placement costs are running higher. The trend is running higher. That also has been reflected in the 2027 budget recommendation. Similar with land records and vitals, recording fees, they're increasing, but they're still below budget. We've taken some of the budget pressure off with the transfer from IT, and that's included in the 2027 budget recommendation. Dave mentioned the jail, inmate revenues. Those are trending up. We're already have already exceeded the budget for 2026, and we still got several months to go. So that's what's driving that $450,000 increase that Administrator Hemsey mentioned earlier. Public Works, this is a big concern that we've had. We shared the concern with the board. We've talked with Public Works about it on a regular basis. Their reimbursements for their capital projects, those big road and bridge projects, has gone negative. $10 million negative. It's been that between 10, 15 last couple months. But it's all related to the reimbursements from the various partners, state and federal levels. But they are promising to get that back to be a positive number. I wrote here in fall of 2026, Mary Kay just whispered to me, I should say late fall of 2026. So that's the latest update. But that's a driving factor, because when we're negative, we got a black hole, that means we don't have as much money to invest, as Administrator Hemsey said. If we can get that, the plan is to get that back positive, then we're confident we can increase our investment income in 2027 by 250,000. So we're going to keep an eye on that. But that's how, what one division's doing impacts what other people can do. But as Dave mentioned, we work as a team, and we've been discussing that, and we think we've got a plan that we can rely on for 2027. In terms of License Center, this is also something we've been sharing with the board last several years. The projection for 2026 is expenses are going to be higher than revenues by 300,000. It compares real close with 2025 actual, 282. The good news is on the budget, we project higher last several years. So we've stopped the bleeding in terms of the License Center, the bottom line. We still need some help from the legislature in terms of those fees, because our fee, we can't adjust our fees as our costs increase related to wages and benefits. So we haven't seen a fee increase for several years, and that negatively impacts us and all of the other license centers across the state. That's been a priority of the county board the last several years. We plan to revisit that as well. But we're hoping, we have made several changes in terms of our management team, and we're able to now when we bring people in, well, we're actually attracting people with some experience, so they're able to hit the ground running sooner. And then the people that don't have experience, we got to train them up. We're able to train them up faster than we used to, so they're able to generate revenue sooner. That's been a strategic priority of ours for the last several years. That's starting to really pay off, as well as the training of all of our staff, so everyone can learn from each other, and everyone can process transactions faster, which also means we provide a higher level of customer service. So they really go well together. We implemented a self-service kiosk in Jan for appointments. And checking in, you can do that now without having to talk to somebody. You can go right in, get yourself in line with the kiosk, and that's helped from a customer efficiency as well as staff productivity.
Dave, does that suggest that from 25 actual to 27, we'll roughly double the loss out of the DMV?
No, the 27 budget is reflective of the 26 budget. We're actually going to look at that in fall. Now that I mentioned we've stopped the bleeding, we're consistently beating our budget, and it might be time to adjust our budget, is what that reflects. Our budget might not be reflecting the efficiency and the staff productivity that we're experiencing, in the real world. So it's related to turnover. It's hard for us to gauge when we got staff turning over and we got new people in new spots, and really to kind of be able to say how much are they going to be able to generate. But now that they've done it 2 years in a row, we feel more confident that maybe we've made some significant budget adjustment type of level changes in our revenues compared to expenditures. So we might be budgeting, we might be too negative on the budget. That might be able to come down. That'll be something we're going to look at for between now and December.
Dave, on that, what about the private license centers? Are they?
They're struggling as well. Their strategy is to limit. A lot of them, their strategy is to limit the types of services they provide. They're a limited service. They don't do everything that we do. They tend to do the ones that are a little more profitable. The tabs and the title transfers. They don't do the driver's license renewals. The real ID, because those they take time. There's a lot of paperwork involved, and that's a driving factor. The state keeps pushing more work on us and doesn't pay us. But the private sector has the ability to limit. They're not a full service license center, so that's their main strategy. There are other strategies as well, but that's the one I've heard the most about.
Thank you.
And Dave, was there any changes in when people mailed in their payment for the tabs? Weren't we ultimately going to get reimbursed?
Yeah, that's the top priority for the legislature. The legislators hired 2 consultants to look at this state and local government relationship in terms of the license center operations. And both of them recommended that the revenue share for when the state collects payments that used to come to us, as Commissioner Fahey mentioned, being able to mail in. That was something that during COVID became real popular. And the state gets that money, and then obviously the local license center doesn't get that. But the recommendation is to share those online revenues, those mail revenues that the state's receiving with the local governments that used to get that. So, similar to what the private sector does, the state's taking the easier, most profitable transactions. They're offering that online. They're offering that through the mail. And then we get stuck with the harder ones and the ones that are more complicated. And there's a divorce involved with a title transfer. Well, then you got to figure all that out. And the state's not doing those online. They're not doing those kind of transactions through the mail. So the recommendation by two consultants is that they should share the money. The states had their own fiscal problems. So their answer is, we need all the money. We can't share it. So that's been an ongoing discussion. We actually have a resolution that we'll be bringing forward next month from the deputy registrars recommending, putting in writing, that the county board supports our legislative priority to try and get revenue sharing in place with the state. So ongoing discussion, but we'll be hitting that one for 2027 with the board. So that's 2026. As I mentioned, that definitely plays a factor into the recommendation, the trends that we're seeing. The other big factor is the tax-based trends. Overall, the taxable market value has increased over 5.5%. It's now $25 billion. That's all levels: apartments, commercial, ag, residential. Majority of that's residential, about 70%. A key number is our new construction that adds the tax base. The county board's able to increase the levy by $900,000 because of that new construction without impacting the existing tax base. So that's obviously a big number. It's a little low compared to where we've been. There is that kind of up and down, but that's a key number in terms of the tax impact on the average dwelling home, or all taxpayers, I guess. You can see the market value changes there. The bottom line is there's a tax burden shift from or to apartment and commercial from the types of commercial or the types of property, residential, ag, that are the values are increasing slower. So there's a shift behind the scenes, regardless of the tax levy that the board adopts. There'll be a shift to the apartments and commercial from ag and residential. Now, so far there's been a lot of discussion on in terms of the narrative, kind of and the strategies and the pressures. Now we shift to actual numbers. And the first number we'll start with is the administrator's recommended preliminary 2027 levy increase. You can see that's the middle highlighted numbers, and that's at 8.5%, and that's made up of a base increase, 7%, and then the 1.5 legislative impact surcharge that Administrator Hemsey talked about for 2027. That would generate $6.9 million, and then the monthly impact on the average value home would be $10. You can see that the median value home is increased 1.7%, and the annual impact on that home would be just under 8%. And the difference between that 8.5 and the 7.9 is the new construction. It's also the fiscal disparities, where we're sharing our commercial tax base with the other metro counties. And you can see in 2026 and 2025, with the levy increase, the difference between that the levy increase and the county tax impact, there's a much higher percentage difference there. That's due to the new construction number as well as the fiscal disparities. We're doing better in previous years on fiscal disparities. We didn't do as well in 2027 because we're growing faster than other counties. So then fiscal disparities shares that growth, either the commercial growth in new construction or the value in terms of the value of the commercial property.
Did our median house value change? Because I was working at $500,000 as of last year.
That's we're kind of working through that. You're probably looking at the average value home. What happened to average value home? On this now we shifted to the median value, and we're we're gonna work through, make sure we're consistent on that. But the average value means a certain thing in certain times, and then the median value, it represents a different number. They're relatively the same, but what we found out is that most of the other counties in the metro area at least are using median value for this average value home. So we're in the process of switching that. So that's probably what's the different numbers you're looking at. In terms of the budget summary, as Administrator Hemsey often reminds me, this is my favorite slide of all the ones that we put together. This shows 2027, the recommended budget, as well as 2025 and 2026. So historically looking back the previous 2 years, as well as looking ahead to next year. And you can see we split up all the discussions, all of the divisions, all of the things going on, and we break it down into these 7 line items. And the top one is the county levy increase. I just mentioned that. You can see the trend for that number over the last 2 years, and then what we're projecting or recommending for 2027. That's that 6.9 million I just mentioned. And then, as County Administrator Hemsey mentioned, the biggest number on this summary every year is the projected salaries and benefits increase. We're a service organization, and we have people to deliver those services, and you can see that's our projection to maintain competitive levels and address the benefit increases. So $8 million, that's obviously the biggest driver of our budget for 2027. And I should mention that is we had at this point we don't have any contracts, labor agreements for 2027. So that's a little harder, obviously a harder number to get our hands around. But at this point, that's our, based on where the market's at, that's our projection for 2027. Legislative impacts, you can see that I have the asterisk there in 2025. As Administrator Hemsey mentioned, this has always been going on, these cost shifts and unfunded mandates. They've been going on forever, but they haven't been going on at as unprecedented level as we're seeing it started in 2026, and we're seeing it in 2027, and we're projecting it to continue right now in law. It's going to happen. We're not sure exactly because it could move a little bit, but that we talk about in 2028. So it's at an unprecedented level, so we started tracking it, and because of such a big number. The 1.5 was the 2% in the 2026 adopted budget, and the 1.2 is what's recommended, and that's the 1.5% surcharge. The debt service for master space plan, that is a government center project. As Dave alluded, that's $450,000, and this will be our 3rd year in a 5-year plan. So we got including 2027, we got 3 left, but including 2027, then we'd have 2 left, 2028 and 2029. I've got a slide that'll highlight that as well. But you can see that's obviously a big impact on our budget, is planning for that $82 million project. Countywide adjustments, division adjustments, those are the trends. And we split them out between countywide. Those are the big things that impact across the county, like investment income is an example in the countywide, and as well as the division, each individual division, what they've come up with. And you can see how that's changed is, kind of every year. We got most of the adjustments in 2025 at the countywide level, almost $1 million. Then that shifted a little bit in 2026, where over $1 million came from the divisions. And then this year you can see the significant impact and the significant change came from the divisions, over $2 million in adjustments. And then the levy funded FTEs, you can see how that's changed. That represents levy savings from FTEs, over $400,000 included in the administrator's recommended budget, which he mentioned in terms of vacancy eliminations and outsourcing various services. So that's the big picture on how we get to a budget or get to zero. So there's no longer a budget gap. Then I have a number of slides that'll provide more detail on these numbers. And then included in your packet will be even more detail. I'll just summarize them at a high level in the remaining slides, but then there's more detail for each one of those slides in your packet. Okay, the legislative impacts, we got 2 years, 2027 budget. You can see how those, although we got them all listed out there. We wanted to just detail all those. And then the big one right in the middle is we call it the ACT. That's court-ordered child protection costs, over 1.3 million for 2027. It's a new law, so it's kind of hard to get a crystal ball on it, but Heather and her team have done a great job analyzing that, and they've come up with, this is the impact for 2027, 1.3 million. If you add up all the legislative impacts for 2027, it'd be 2.5 million. And you can see then the levy surcharge, we would need to, that number would need to be 3%, and then 1% in 2028. So more in 2027 and then less in 2028 as a strategy that the Administrator Hempsey discussed, using one-time money to lower that impact in 2027 and then shift it to 2028 is a strategy that's a key part of this 2027 recommendation. And I should point out that, and I have a slide to break it out, but their state gave us one-time money for these impacts to try and soften the blow. So the state, put some of the money on the table to shift this from, this impact from 2027 to push 2028, and then we're recommending additional county funds to that 1.23 million, shift that. We lower the cost in 2027 on a one-time basis, and we shift it to 2028. What that does then is the 2027 levy surcharge is now goes from 3%, cuts it in half, goes down to 1.5%, and then it shifts the 1.5% in 2028 from 1% initially up to the 2.5%. And as Administrator Hemsey mentioned, we're still hopeful that in 2028 we'll be able to drive that number down a little bit, but on the other hand, it could go up as well. But at this point, we're projecting 2.1 million, which works out to about 2.5% levy surcharge for 2028.
Dave, could I interrupt you for a second, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
So there is one more number we're waiting on from the state of Minnesota in Heather's world, and it's a potential big one. Is it LTSS?
That's what's down at 200,000.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so that's an unknown. We put a $200,000 plug number in here, expecting that kind of cut. We're hopeful that won't happen. So hopefully within the next week or 2 or 3, maybe even by the next board meeting, we'll have that number.
That's the LTSS? No?
No.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, right.
It was one of the 2 allocations we
Yeah.
mentioned during the budget.
Right.
Yeah, there.
We did get one. We're still waiting on the
I do know, as far as the LTSS, other counties are not budgeting for that.
Anything?
Nothing.
Well, maybe.
Right.
I'm hearing, some school of thought thinking, well, boy, if we budget for it, the state's going to say, you solved the problem. We're not going to fix it.
Right.
Now, are they
So if we
budgeting
don't
or
budget for it-
aren't they? I think some are perhaps putting that in contingency somewhere and not talking about it as much. That's not our approach. We're much more transparent, put it out there. I think it's better to do that for a number of reasons. But back to that 200 number, even if that number came in, let's say equal to what we're getting now, we still have this fundamental problem of the 28 issue. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend taking that and driving the levy down. So I think, that'd be my recommendation, unless that number is really just a crazy number that surprises us. But stay tuned on that one. I just want to make sure that, and by the way, that's unprecedented too. I don't ever remember being sitting in the room at this date going, well, we're waiting on a big number from the state of Minnesota.
Just to give some context, there's Health and Human Services gets 32 allocations from the state, and it's always been a delay from when the rest of our budget's put together, but the delay is usually was into May. Yeah. So
late June, early July.
yeah.
We just got them last Friday, so they're coming.
So we've got 30 so far now as of today. Well, 31. We just got one last Friday, but the last big one, of course, is the big one, And that's the one, so we got a $200,000 contingency. Expecting not to get good news on that, but as Dave mentioned, we'll see, wait and see. But yeah, 31 out of 32, which is really, really, really late. And obviously it makes our budgeting harder because we don't know what the state, and there's no explanation, it's kind of a black box, there's no way to predict it. They just come out and say, we're changing this on you guys, so.
Dave, on the
More to
Act
come on that.
line in 2028 budget, is it really zero? Is that
Yeah,
the right?
Well, it's a great point. I should explain.
Yeah.
The 2028 is the incremental cost. We'll still have the 1.35 million. If that holds, that'll still be in 2028, but we're not projecting any additional, any new and increased costs in 2028. So the numbers you see there in 2028 are what we believe the 2028 increase will be compared to 2027. As you see, LTSS is on there. We think half of it's going to happen in 2027. The other half's coming in 2028, according to how we read the law at this point and how we project it. So that's the additional. It's just the incremental increase in 2028, which isn't that significant, 873. It would only be a 1%, but by shifting it now, then it would go up to 2.5%. But we'll still try and work that down as much as we can. But we buy ourselves a year to see, including the act, which is a new law. Hard to get the crystal ball on how that's going to come out. But we'll buy ourselves some time, and then we'll have a better projection for 2028.
I mean, to Commissioner Uterman's point, I do wonder if that, I mean, we'll have to see how this goes. But, I mean, it's optimistic to keep that at a 0 at this point. But
Mr. Chair,
we have a whole year to figure
I would
that out.
also add, to me, it's the inverse of our outsourcing strategy.
Right,
Now, here come these costs, these mandates from the state. They don't cover it. You'll see it on attachment B, the staffing list. We staff up to address these problems, and then we take the burden of these staff, not only for 27, but beyond, right? So all these costs that we're trying to get away from to some degree are now piled on and not covered by the state, which I think 0 is the wrong number quite, but for presentation purposes, it's right, but it's not going to be 0. I'm hopeful, though, that gets overtaken and much reduced by a change in what they're requiring. That's the real key to me, from my perspective, is if you're not going to fund it, don't make us do so much, right? Change the law, scale it back. Don't require some of these things we think are counterproductive requirements that don't meet the needs of these children.
right.
Many of them, if not most. And I'm treading on thin ice here because I don't know Heather's world, but I know enough to tell you that.
Right.
And to me, it's just a fundamental poor decision at a different level that's now propelling our budget in the wrong direction.
I'm not hopeful, Dave, but I appreciate your optimism.
I am.
I'm even more optimistic, but that's
I'm
my
hopeful
nature.
because it's
Well,
so.
you're not sitting in the rooms.
I think it's so egregious.
Having these
you know.
conversations.
Usually it takes just such a obvious, egregious
Right.
problem to stop the pendulum at least and move it back the other way. And that's the pendulum. The other pendulum swing is that benefit shift. You see it in here. Benefit and admin. All right, SNAP. There's the other one, Heather. Is that the waiver issue?
Yeah, that's,
Yes.
LTSS is the waiver issue. Yep.
That's the grandfather of all of these things. If they start shifting those benefit costs to us, which, those are all our clients we're taking care of, all the benefits, the expensive costs and I think those are more justified to me than some of these other pieces. But to justify us taking the benefit that's why this number jumps out at you so much.
Yeah, and just to highlight that federal SNAP cost shift, that's the other one where there's a benefit and an administrative piece, and the benefit piece is coming in 2028. So that's the 650,000, which is a big number, and it's a huge change. We've never, as Dave mentioned, we haven't been responsible for the benefit side. There's been some administrative costs that we've been part of and stuff, but not the actual benefit piece. So yeah, that is a huge black hole, and has a significant impact on us. The thing I will point out, part of my optimism, just so it's not just crazy, the 1.35.
I never said that word, by the way.
Yeah, fair point. That was a much larger number last year at this time.
That was.
So, we did make progress on that number from a year ago last year and what we thought that number would be for 2027. So there has been good news on that. Obviously, it's still a big number. We got more, hopefully more good news to come. But as Dave mentioned, it's a crystal ball. All budgeting is a crystal ball. But some of it you got a pretty good handle on, and some of it's very cloudy. And, there's a couple numbers in here that are very cloudy at this point. But, we, as Dave mentioned, we like to be transparent. We share the board, the news we have, good, bad, ugly, whatever. And then we all can work together to manage it and do the best, including legislative discussions and priorities.
I would add, if I could, the SNAP issue, I believe that's in the proposed farm bill.
It is.
Is that where it's parked?
It is.
And there is discussion about at least covering it temporarily. And I know there is some hope there. I have a little optimism, right? That's why, because you see the debate at the federal level. So call me crazy if I'm relying on the federal level to solve our problems, but that's where it starts.
And that is what's holding up the farm bill. So, and there's a lot of work being done by AMC to continue to put pressure on those state officials, those federal officials, to alleviate some of that. So.
And if we're discussing line items, there's the targeted case management rates where, according to Heather, the state arbitrarily just changed the payments for us without anything legislatively. We're in a discussion here about our preliminary budget, and we're still waiting for the state to report to us on numbers that normally we'd get in May. And you want us to adopt a preliminary levy. If the state won't, can we delay this?
We have a statutory requirement to adopt a preliminary.
Do they have a
levy.
statutory requirement to actually give us numbers we need to do our budget?
Probably not.
come
Well,
on.
if they do,
Humble.
they wouldn't buy it. They're not paying attention to it.
I do think related to that, though, one of the strategies to think about is preliminary levy against the ceiling. You can bring it down, right? Now, again, I'm not,
Again, but that 200,000 number could come at 800,000.
it could, I don't know. Budgeting there's art behind it. I doubt it. I don't know.
I mean, our other one that we've been waiting on came in just pretty flat and, kind of with a minor slight increase.
You got to come up to get picked up on the mic.
I'm sorry. The allocation we just received this last Friday came in pretty flat. We had a very, very slight increase in that, but for all intents and purposes, stayed flat. I'm expecting, I'm feeling a little more optimistic, I'll use Dave's term, a little more optimistic that this last one will come in flat as well, just because of the drag, and I think the fact that it is taking so long probably will lean towards not much change is kind of, my best optimistic hope at this point, but I would be surprised if it's a huge shift at this. I don't think 800,000, maybe 50 is where my gut says 50.
Office
where I'm
pool
at.
going here, I guess.
A lot of hoping, guts,
Yeah.
feelings. This is
Intuition.
no way to,
20-some years of experience here.
Throw it at a dartboard.
hey,
Oh,
legislature,
good.
this is no way to treat your siblings.
We do trend analysis with other issues. It is sort of that art, right? Investment income, on and on, the list goes, salaries even with turnover, right? So we'll keep you updated, but again, process-wise, we do have that flexibility to move through the preliminary into December.
And just let me go back and make a point that Dave made earlier, but just to reiterate, if that $200,000 number that we have for this last program comes in and there is savings, it's only a 50,000 impact, Heather's guess, or it is zero or whatever, Dave, he mentioned this, I'm just repeating what he said, he would not recommend lowering the levy in 2027 to reflect that. We would lower that surcharge shift, the one-time money that we're using, the 1.23, we would lower that down by that amount, so that could become 1.21, and then we would shift that. So 2027 would stay the same, there'd be no change there, but it would lower the impact in 2028, is how that would play out. So we're not waiting on that to actually set the levy number, we're just waiting on that, and vice versa. If it did come in higher, our recommendation would use more one-time funds and keep that levy where it is in 2027, and then shift the impact to 2028.
Are cities waiting there's 87 counties still waiting for numbers. Are cities still waiting for numbers?
Yeah, cities could be, but they don't have the revenue streams.
Social services.
yeah, they don't have the social services. I mean, there might be some other number they're waiting on, but, yeah, it's all Health and Human Services, which is a county function, not a city, so I would guess not.
Mr. Chair, makes me question my choice of becoming a county administrator versus, we won't go there. But it is more difficult, I think, to package our budget up because of, the cities are not experiencing this seismic shift that we are. And they have a lot of these other variables, but much different world. I did want to, before you flip off this chart, point out AIS inspections, which is
Yep.
a very popular, if nothing else, service. It is a difficult recommendation for me to make personally as an environmentalist to cut and let me make it clear, the inspection side of aquatic invasive species. I'm not recommending cutting the monitoring and ongoing education, but one of the dynamics is that first of all, the state legislature cut it, half of it.
Yeah, yep.
So
Yeah,
it's
so
70
it's a top line item on our chart.
So,
70,000.
so it's really the only item that I could look at and go, well, it's not a mandate. The state cut it and we can cut it, right? So there's some logic behind that, but I'm well aware of the impact of that and the concern that all citizens will have and the folks that are lakeshore, lakeshore owners, et cetera. There's a couple of wrinkles in there too with, Chanhassen covering, they pay for their inspections. We provide the staff. So we've already given Lori a heads up at Chanhassen that, well, we're going to get out of the business under this recommendation. So I'm not sure what they're going to do. We're working on jointly some communications. Maybe they'll continue it with somebody else. I'm not sure. It's definitely a big challenge to staff these roles, the seasonal roles. If nothing else, it's kind of like, that overhead it gets you, gets this number, then the costs associated with it again, when this mandate, I think the DNR should be taking care of it, right? Why isn't the DNR handling their responsibility? Why are we stepping up to the plate? But it's a tough cut. It does go back to the service level and choices that are in front of you. It's not the only tough one, but it is right on top of the list. Not a huge number. And each of those I would say they have different components to them. Each of the reductions in the discretionary service level area, but I did want to point that one out as it was up on the board here.
And thank you. I have gotten, feedback, pushback on that one because it's an upstream activity. And, there's concerns. But we have a lot of difficult decisions to make. That's one of them. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, the rest of the numbers are numbers that we've seen in past budgets. They're much more the typical kind of increases we're seeing, so we're just kind of updating for the trends and the adjustments that we're seeing as we look into 2027. I mentioned the $450,000 that comes out of our long-term financial plan, along with an increase in levy for our facilities, vehicles, and equipment replacement. We have a 5-year schedule for everything that we can think of that has wheels or that needs to be replaced in a schedule. And this increase allows for us to continue on that replacement schedule. And it's really driven by Public Works with all their trucks. And you guys have seen the aging of the fleet. This responds to that. So it's real strategic, and it is a 5-year plan. And it is part of our long-term plan to continue to put additional dollars towards that as the cost to replace those vehicles, equipment, and facilities all increases. There's a transfer from our operating budget to fund our one-time projects. That's a strategic shift for 2 reasons. One is to reduce the reliance of our operating budget on state CPA. That has been something that's been has fluctuated up and down over time, and reduce the state aid coming into the general fund, which pays for our salaries and the lights and the heat, and shift it to capital projects. So we have a little bit more flexibility in our budgeting should that state CPA number ever get cut, which has, since I've been here, it's been cut drastically. There is the board members back in the plenty years when we have that Christmas surprise where half of our CPA was cut. And then the second part of that is it does provide one-time funding for our capital projects on attachment E. So it has two purposes to do that. That's why it's part of our long-term plan to continue doing that. Investment income, we mentioned that. That was something we've been working on. Mary Kay's been leading that effort. We're transitioning, the board approved hiring a third-party investment advisor as we shift from an individual doing that to more of a team and a third party involved in it. That team's been able to unlock some investments that we couldn't get to, but being a larger firm, they're able to do that. And then just having a group of people working on that, watching our cash flow, watching our investment strategies. There's a number of factors in that 250, including Public Works. Linden getting their cash balance back to positive numbers in late fall. Now shifting to, those are countywide ones, now shifting to the division trends and requests and additional revenue and adjustments. And you can see the three buckets there that we went through. In just to point out the biggest change from when we're talking, we presented the numbers, the initial budget strategy back in our strategic planning session in the end of May. That number was 1.3 million additional levy for all these trends, all these costs, kind of the inflationary things that Dave mentioned earlier. The various costs that we're seeing. That got trimmed down to just over 900,000 as of today. And then from the two other buckets, close to $2 million in revenue increases from the sheriff's office. Dave mentioned the jail as well as the contract revenue was a significant factor. And then the other divisions as well. So that was a big change. As of April, we hadn't looked at the revenues yet. We were focused on the expenditure side, and then we shifted to the revenue side. And you can see that was a very big positive number for 2027. And then the other piece was we call them the closed budget gap adjustments, things that changes that we're making, outsourcing some services that Dave mentioned. That was over $1 million. So you can see the shift. Basically 3 months of work, hard work by the divisions and their staff, hard work by leading the effort by the county administrator, and then Mary Kay keeping track of all the details. So that's the big change from the workshop that we had to today's presentation and today's recommendation for 2027. Staffing, that's our attachment B. Various numbers in there. You can see the red is where we're eliminating positions, and highlight the ones that are vacant, and then the one down below where it's not, in the public services area. You can see that the recommended FTEs is actually a decrease, and you can see that over $400,000, and you saw that back in the budget summary, that there in terms of levy savings for our FTEs overall in the county. That does not include the additional staff in response to the act, the legislative impact number that we mentioned before. And this is being funded by that levy surcharge. So part of that 1.5 million that we saw earlier on the act, that's impacting us in 2027. What were the staff requests here, the 3 social workers, a case aide, a paralegal, as well as the half of the assistant county attorney. So the net cost is $626,000, but that's being funded by that 1.5% levy surcharge. So now, big picture, the $100 of our county levy, how is it allocated? Where does that go? You can see Health and Human Services and Probation, just over a quarter, and the various other divisions with the county sheriff, operations, all the way through. And then there is a kind of description down at the bottom to help break out the combined areas. And then historical data, just to kind of give it some context on where the 2027 recommendation compares to previous budgets. You can see that the biggest factor in terms of the total budget where we're at is the darker blue, and that's the capital outlay. That'd be road and bridges in public works. And you can see 2026, was down in terms of capital projects significantly from 2025, and then 2027 is going back up again. Those are all, not all, but almost all of that is from sources of funds other than the county levy. So it's, from the state, from the feds, our various partners are paying for all of those projects. You can see the other personnel, non-personnel, and debt services, smaller increases over time, but definitely just kind of gives you some last 5 years where the budget increases and decreases have come from.
Dave, does that dark blue on the right top for 2027 recommended include the dollars we have allocated for the building?
That would actually be, right now, where would that? That's a great Mary Kay question. I was going to guess, but I think we might as well just get the source. In debt service? So it's in the debt service area.
Because I know that our county, maybe even compared to cities within our county, our debt service is minuscule, sub $6 million. But I know when you bring on an $82 million building and then face the prospect of a First Street Center, what that might be, that debt service will grow, but it'll still be, I guess, responsible compared to peers at the county level and minuscule compared to maybe some of the spending that's happening at the city level. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I'd say I'd include school districts in that as well.
School district, yeah.
Not all. A lot of school districts, they have much larger debt service.
Yeah, bigger,
numbers.
way bigger.
Yeah, way bigger. But you can see in us, yeah, ours is green. We haven't issued debt, new debt in a long time. We've refinanced some debt, when interest rates were lower. But in terms of new debt, we haven't done it for a while. We've been paying it off. And why that number is increasing, 450,000, for the last 3 budget cycles. But the debt that has been paid off is being redirected toward this new one. So that's why that number hasn't gone down as debt's been paid off, because it's just been redirected. And then the 450 has been added into that, which barely shows up because it's a relatively small number compared to our large budget.
Will we see the 600 building or in future First Street Center building appear in capital outlay ever, or will it always be contained within debt service?
No, you'll see the capital project. It'll come through. The cycle actually might not fit with a budget. It's more likely to come in when we're ready to go. We'll come into the boardroom and say, let's do it, but it'll be June, July, whatever month it'll be. So the board will see it, and then it'll roll into it. But yeah, the timing is not likely to line up that we're going to have that project in an actual budget, but it will be obviously approved by the board. But the financing for it is every year coming in front of the boardroom, as I mentioned, at 450, and then we got 2 more years to go. A quick summary slide on CPA, county program aid from the state. This is the one I mentioned that our strategy's been to reduce the reliance on the operating budget, and that's that $100,000 shift. And you can see that reflected in the dark blue of the one-time projects, where it was $440,000 back in 2021, and then in 2027 it's up to $985,000. I described this to the Administrator Hemsey as one of my legacies, that we're taking the CPA and taking it out of our operating budget and putting into our one-time projects, because we have one-time projects that come up. We have a very good long-term plan. We got a very good 5-year replacement schedule. We are looking for things. We have a master space plan. But even with all that planning, there are things that come up that we hadn't anticipated that now we need to have money for. This, close to $1 million is every year we'll have that $1 million. We're able to supplement that last couple of years because of that debt service that has been redirected, paid off, and we're saving it for this government center project. So it's actually, we're going to see that we have more than the $1 million. But eventually that service is going to have to get redirected towards the bond sale. and then we won't be able to use it for attachment E, but well, not always, we will have this $1 million. And then it does allow us flexibility in the future, and we have cut this in the past when needed, when it makes sense. Because we have more flexibility on our capital projects, obviously, than in our operating budget when we got to pay salaries, we got to pay, keep the lights on and stuff. So just,
The legacy comment, by the way, talked me out of cutting it. It's pretty effective. I think it is a great strategy.
Yeah.
But
And-
it is
and-
one, to me, it is one of those, well,
yeah.
isn't it, it's a great strategy, it's nice, but it's $100,000 pressure.
Yeah, exactly. And it was, he put it in there and I took it out and told him it was my legacy. That doesn't mean we can't take it back out again, if we get to that point. But it's just, I didn't want to go to that too early because that's a big number. And we want to be able to, that's a key number to be able to each year have a source of funds that we can use for things that come up that were unexpected, that we didn't have a chance to plan for. And we'll have a chart showing that on attachment E coming up here. Vacancy savings, that's another number that, as Dave mentioned, is kind of crystal ball. Finance just tracks the trend and watches where it goes, and then tries to anticipate, based on the past 5 years as the best indicator of where we're going in the future. And you can see how that number's moved around. The darker blue shows that we are not increasing vacancy savings in our operating budget for 2027. We have reduced the amount that we're setting aside for our cash flow because every year our budget increases, and then we need 30% of that set aside for cash flow. So as the budget goes up, we need more cash. We need more cash to be able to pay for salaries and the lights and everything until we get our property tax allocation that comes in May. So that's a key number to be able to make sure we have the cash, increase our cash flow account as our budget increases, and this is our main strategy to do that. Those are our operating numbers. Now looking into our CIPs, or our capital improvement plans, and then our highlight on the facilities, vehicle, and equipment replacement. I mentioned before the road and bridge. That's that big capital number that you've seen fluctuate. Was really high 2 years ago, and then down last year, and then now up again for 2027. It's $46 million, but it's all federal, state, sales tax money, city, our various partners. The piece that's county tax levy in that number is the 2.3 million, and that's what we use for road preservation. That levy number did not change, same as 2026. And the various other CIPs, and you can see no county tax levy in any of those capital improvement plans. And then attachment D, it does break out for 2027 how that 2.2 million is being allocated, and it is 105 increase from 2026, and that actually reflects one of the adjustments that we made. It was originally the plan, according to our long-term plan, would have been a $150,000 increase to give more money for public works for their fleet, as they explained in their budget presentation. But we were able to shift. They still got their $50,000 increase to get to 150, but then we were able to reduce 45,000 from a different division and offset that. So that it was kind of an odd number, 105, but it was part of the recommendation to lower that from the original 150. Taking a big look at all of the financial plan behind our capital, behind our CIPs. This kind of starts getting into the top one. There is the number I've been talking about in terms of the debt service that is available for the government center bond sale, 4.15, and then 450,000 increase. Final goal is 5.4. We expect to get there in 2029 if we get those 2 more years after that. So that'll be the debt service for the bond sale. And then our road and bridge CIP, I mentioned the 2.3. That's planned to stay at 2.3. Linda's able to continue the road preservation with that 2.3 million by using other revenue sources, or that's enough for the foreseeable future to continue the preservation plan that he has for our road and bridges. Parks and Trails, that is 200,000 at this point, it's ongoing. And we have the relationship with, potential relationship with Three Rivers Parks. So that'll be, we continue to look at that, as well as our 5-year replacement schedule. It is in our long-term plan to go up to 150, but we're not sure when the final is, right? When we get to a point where we can stop that, or will it be 150? But at least for the foreseeable future, we're looking at 150,000. But we don't have a final year at this point. And then the one-time projects, there's from CPA we got the 900,000, and they were adding that 100,000, and that ongoing is in terms of how long do we keep continuing that. But at this point, that's that's the summary of our financial, the financing numbers behind our CIPs. And I mentioned the one-time capital projects. Here, this is what the county minister is recommending for 2027. We have $8 million available with a recommended year-end savings transfer of the S account to get to that $8 million, along with the debt service that's available, and then the $1 million from the county program aid, as well as some public safety from the sheriff's. He had a one-time allotment, and he's transferring that in to help cover the $8 million for a specific public safety project. Then the recommendations from how that's spent. 2.8 of it comes out of our long-term financial plan. Various a big software purchase for our payroll and ER software, replace that, and then IT equipment, various roofs and different things. And then 5.2, I call it division requests. $2 million is being allocated for the government center project, cash transfer, which will reduce the bond sale amount, as well as $2 million for the Chaska library. The total, I have a slide that'll show, but that's for 2027, those 2.2. So the $5 million is really made up of the $4 million there, and then various other one-time things that we need to decided we needed to do in 2027.
Dave, quick question. Where's the other 2 million for the Chaska Library going to come from?
Give me
You
one more
already
slide.
have that.
Yeah, it's coming.
I thought I saw it somewhere else.
Yeah, it's coming.
Okay.
It's coming. I'll summarize.
Okay.
This is just for 2027. But then
Okay.
I'll show you what we've done already for the Wolfos project and what we're going to do, what the plan is for 2028.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
you just, but I want to point out the two big requests that were not recommended by the county ministry for funding was the 1.5 from the township sewer phase one of that project. That would have been half of the cost. And then there was parks projects that we put a freeze on in terms of the Three Rivers Park. We didn't want to commit to those at this time. We'll get through that, and then we'll use them going forward for future park projects. And then a new slide, attachment E2. We used to have just A1, and then we added A2, as you recall, because we wanted to be able to highlight those legislative impacts. Well, now we have one-time funding for services. The previous attachment E1 was for one-time funding for projects. Now we're doing one-time funding for services. Because partly it was driven by the state because the states gave us one-time money to offset some of these costs. So we are recommending the $750,000 to split the act cost, the 1.5. Half of that we're paying for levy in 2027. Half of it we're paying for one-time funding. And then in 2028, we'll increase the levy. The plan will be increase the levy by the other half. Then in terms of these are actually where the money would go to. A 6-month contingency for that did not meet criteria. And then the SNAP and admin benefit. And you can see down below the one-time funding came from state aid, the $329,000. That's how much we got from the state. And then $150,000 of vacancy savings. And then just under $1 million we transferred out of ES. And that's to allow that or pay for that 750, mainly that 750 for the act, shifting it from 2027, take the pressure off the levy in 2027 and shift it to 2028. That's mainly coming from our year-end savings account. That's a shift. We have not done this before, but it's got a new attachment. And that's why we wanted to highlight and really break these out to make sure everyone's aware of this shift, this one-time funding, and then shifting it to 2028.
Mr. Chair, if I could just comment on this one, because at first it might appear, boy, you're breaking your golden rule. Why you spend on one-time money on ongoing things? But again, to clarify my comments I made originally, in 2028, there is a plan to level the field here, to apply enough money to the base for ongoing services. That to me is the key, to recognize it, have a plan in place. It does take a commitment, right, from the board. Hopefully, again, by 2028, things are better than expected and some of this eases back, et cetera. But I think you can also pick up, boy, there's some big question marks in here. The DNMC does not meet criteria. Okay, the individual is no longer in the facility. Might he come back or somebody else? Maybe. That's a percent, right? Or half a
Yes, it
percent
is.
right there, right? But I think, from my perspective, obviously it's in my recommendation. I think it's smart to think about the likelihood that might happen, right? So let's at least put some one-time money aside to buy some time then to pay for that sort of budget busting kind of event, which is all contingent, crazy enough, on perhaps one individual. Could be two, right? Or it could be zero. We're hoping it's zero, and then we just keep this in a retainer.
So I mentioned our year-end savings account. There's a quick update. You can see where we started. We went all the way back to the January 1st of 2025, how that then was increased based on 2025 results. And then for what we had in 2026, last year at this time, the board approved, the county administrator recommended the board approved spending $1 million of that year-end savings on attachment E. We just had attachment E at that point, just one-time projects. Another $200,000 was spent, board approved back in last week, I guess, in the boardroom for that employee relations contract, and that gives about $10 million. And the minister's recommendation includes spending 4.23 of that, transferring for capital, highlighted that before on E1, and then almost $1 million in E2 for services, which would bring us down to just under $5 million in our projected year-end savings for 2027. And so a real quick summary of the master space plan, the project, just because that's such a big number, right? The 82 million. Talking about the objective, the scope, it includes tearing one building down and then significant, what does Nick call it? Heavy remodel? I think he calls it heavy remodel of this building. The shell is going to stay the same, but everything else is going to come out and get redone. The timeline is in there. It's coming up quick in 2027. And then the estimated budget is 82 million. But with the bond sale at this point, we're saying 78 million because of the 2 million we put in recommended for 2027, as well as 2 million from previous budgets. So $78 million bond sale in 2028. And just to recap, we need 5.4 million for that. We have 4.1 already, and then we got 450 coming through the budget process for 2027 as well as the next 2 years.
I would add a quick comment there would be, what are interest rates, Dave?
Yeah, well, right.
If you knew that, we'd all be rich, right?
Yeah.
It certainly looks like they're trending up, the borrowing percentages. And so we'll have to keep an eye on that. But that was also a thought I had when we're sort of buying down this $82 million number. It might all unfortunately come out in the wash in the end if that rate goes up 1% plus. We'll have to see, but we'll be revisiting that with Ellers.
And then looking ahead to our long-term financial plan, we have road and bridges, which I mentioned, funded by the sales and wheelage taxes, our local money as well as federal and state. Buildings and miscellaneous, the large $82 million project that's coming, and as well as the 4.4 Chaska Library, one-time books and shelves we've been talking about. And here's the number you're thinking of.
That's where I saw that.
500,000 back in 2023 was set aside, and then 2 million for this. It's included in the recommendation for this year, and then the plan would be a $2 million request for next year, and that would get us to the 4.4. Actually, 100,000 more, but we'll wait and see how that comes in.
That's contingency.
Yeah, the little contingency. Yeah, there you go. And then Parks and Trails, we have our 5-year plan. You know, our goal was the very poor condition, if you remember that pie chart, and to reduce that very poor condition down to zero was our goal for 2027. You know, we'll see how we can attack that if we make the change in the partnership with Three Rivers. And then 5-year to try and get to the poor condition, that less than 25%. Those were our long-term objectives that we're working with. Whichever way we go, we'll continue to focus on our Parks and Trail 5-year plan for projects. And then in terms of operations, minimize the requests for staffing through technology, innovation, cooperations. We spent a lot of time on that. And levy impacts in 2028. Additional staff for the new Chaska Library. How many FTEs? Still is kind of a number that's being floated around a little bit, moving around a little bit. And then the 3 FTEs is County Administrator Hemsey mentioned before about the public safety telecommunicators. We may not need all of them in 2028, but we do. The need is there, so we need to come up with a strategy in terms of how to add those to our budget over the next couple of years. And then health insurance, Dave mentioned we had a 7% increase for 2027, and then 2028 we'll be back talking with Scale, which is the cooperative agreement with Scott County and some of their cities, and seeing if there's a way to pool our responsibilities and the costs in terms of for health insurance for employees.
Dave, a quick question on that. Just the Chaska Library, when are they gonna break ground on that project?
That's a
I'll know a lot more in a couple of weeks. I have one of those meetings
Do you
coming up.
know the ultimate cost of that?
I do
building?
not.
20
So,
million.
20
20 million plus 4.5 furnishings plus, I think an incremental million plus in staffing for that one library. And that doesn't include the potential for Carver to have the population to support a library in the next 10, 15 years. Victoria outgrowing its space, and I think there's a request for a library in the western part of the county on the table as well. So if you add up all that for buildings and whatnot in the next 10 to 15 years, it could be nearing $80 to $90 million of library expense just on the capital side.
I think we only asked about the Chaska Library, though. Thank you for that
I think
information.
it's good to have a complete look, because if we're going to continue to do stuff in Chaska and it bleeds over to the other communities, we have to look at it holistically. Sometimes we look in isolation of the next 12 or 18 months. I think we have to have a view that looks out 10 or 20 years, because these are huge dollar amounts to be had there. Just like the First Street Center, we haven't planned that. We don't have any budget for that. We're looking at it in 12 and 18-month chunks. We have to look out 10 to 20 years. So,
Which is why I'm, as the library liaison, we're looking at a 30-year comprehensive plan. So, thank you.
But my assumption is they'll probably break ground next year.
Not be open until 2028 is the plan.
Yeah, it's gonna take
Yeah. 2028.
12 months to build it, or?
Yeah.
yeah.
That timeline escapes me at this
Yeah,
point.
and it's intuitive, but that's Commissioner Fahey. That Nick is
Yeah.
Our staff person that is the libraries. You know, just to remind the board, the cities, you know, pay for the cost of the new building. That's going to be a city expense. You don't see that cost in our budget, obviously. It's going to be a city, and then the agreement, the long historical agreement's been the county then pays the one-time cost for the furnishings and the shelves and the books, and then we do provide the staff. So that's been the agreement for a long time.
Yes, yes.
Okay, then the budget calendar. You can see the various meetings that we've had throughout. You know, starting back in April. Dave mentioned, you know, staff starts working on that before April, but then we start meeting with the board at various times, and we're at the work session, and then the plan would be to come back in next week on the board meeting and request the board to adopt a preliminary levy and budget for 2027. And you can see the remaining meetings pretty much follow the past years, other than the December 1st meeting. Usually that's in November, but the way the calendar worked, we're recommending that the public hearing be on the 1st, and then board would take the final adoption on 12/15, which is a little bit later than we've done, but just the way the calendar worked out. And, those are the dates we came up with. And with that, just the, at this point, for board input and direction, the county administrator's recommendation at this point will be on next Tuesday, will the board adopt the levy, with 8.5% increase, the base amount and the surcharge amount, which would be a levy increase of 6.9 million.
Thank you, David. Well, we're kind of getting down to it. Next Tuesday is a big day. We are going to finalize the CDA levy. It's not a preliminary. We're going to finalize it. We will be passing, hopefully, our preliminary levy. It'll be at that time. Commissioner Uterman, if you want to bring up negating the Chaska Library, or eliminate license centers, or whatever. Next week, probably, we should hear more about the missing middle program that you want to probably have the CDA be working on and what that might cost taxpayers. So next week is a big day for all of that to balance our budget out. So thank you. Any comments?
I have a few. I know we often talk about this being Dave's budget. It's not. It's the budget of 114,000 people that live in Carver County, 2,700 employers and 12,000 businesses, plus the people who own land and property, right? It's their budget. We just have the responsibility of doing so, impacting that. We don't get to choose egg prices or gas prices. To a degree, we don't get to choose insurance prices, but we do get to choose the levy that's part of the county. And 33 to 35% of people's budget is going towards housing costs, of which we get to control that levy. And so I appreciate you recognizing some of the areas where I've said, let's take a look at it. I don't know that we can blame the state on their shifts if we continue to take shifts. Do I want to get rid of the DMV? No, I just don't know that that's our responsibility to operate it. It's a state function. And so we went from, I think it was like a $500,000 plus surplus 6, 7, 8 years ago to, I think, budgeted right now is a $552,000 loss next year. And so those are the pragmatic things for us to have pragmatic conversations. And if we don't have other conversations, so be it. I also know that constraints foster creativity. Sometimes we look at these and say, oh my gosh, we got to raise taxes or we got to cut costs. There's a couple other options too. There's efficiencies, there's creativity, and there's generating revenues. And I have been a proponent for unlocking the potential of Highway 212 with a $300 million investment to potentially have $50 billion of increased tax base over the course of a number of years. 2050 would be probably pretty soon for that. And that's met resistance. And so if we continue to say no to some of these areas where we can generate revenue, we're really backed into the corner of saying it becomes taxes or cuts. And so I wanted to throw that out there. We also, as a board, have to answer the question, what is too much? And so I've been very consistent in the last 6 years of saying too much for me is anything that leads to a tax rate increase. So 3 years ago, I think it was a historic, at least one I've never seen before, 6.8% increase. Last year it was 8%. This year we started at 14.5 and whittled it down, which is good and encouraging, to 8.5. But if we take the context of 114,000 residents, that 8.5% increase represents a doubling of your property taxes on the county line every 8.5 years. I just don't think that's right. And so we have to get creative about that. I also think that we need to look out 10 to 20 years, not just in the isolation of 27 or 28. And I think we're doing a better job of that in a lot of different ways. I just want to say a couple of concerns and worries that I have, because at current I can't support 8.5, and for all the reasons I've shared. Number one on my mind is affordability. I think we're seeing a number of people in the middle class slipping into the unaffordability of being subsidized. And if we don't take care of it upstream, then we pay for it downstream. We also pay for it downstream on shifts, not just from state and federal government, but from our cities. When cities build a whole bunch of houses and they don't build a whole lot of balance when it comes to commercial and industrial, we pay the price of that as county. And it's one taxpayer pocket, but we're on the hook for it because we're seeing that shift to property taxes. And if we continue to raise our taxes, we'll have more people that are going to be dependent on the services that Heather and her team provide. I also think that the concerns of a library, not just in the isolation of a conversation with Chaska, and nobody loves our libraries more. If you look at our data, I'd venture to guess my family's probably used the library more than most people in this room. We have young kids. We value that. It's not that I don't value it. But we can't continue to not look at some of the data when we look at our solutions. Our library usage has gone down 43% in the last decade. That's even taking into account COVID, right? If you take from 2016 to current, library utilization has gone down 43%. I think the Chaska Library had 60,000 visitors last year. And if you take the average user comes about 12 times a year, heavy user, that's about 5,000 users at that library. I want there to be a lot more, and if there's a new library, there will be more, but we can't close our eyes to say that Carver's gonna want a library when their population hits a certain point. Victoria's gonna want a different library when they outgrow their use. There's a Western library, and so we need to have pragmatic conversations, because $20 million a building, plus the staffing and plus the stuff that goes into it is not insignificant. And so again, I love our libraries. I've been a supporter of our libraries. I help advocate against a lot of people pushing back on extended access. And I'll just make the point, I've always said we need to maintain at least a minimum of what our staff is currently in our libraries. I've never been an advocate to cut any of our library hours, but we need to be responsible as we grow that those don't creep in as well. And then a couple more things, and then I'll be quiet. We currently don't have any budget or planning for the First Street Center as it is right now. And I know it's going to be expensive, but that's an obsolete, dated building for our services. 5 years ago, we didn't have a plan for our parks. I'm very pleased to see that we have a plan for our parks. We were 20 years deferred maintenance there, and I'm pleased to see we're finally addressing the 600 building. So there's a lot of good things. Last thing I would say is it's awful hard to pass a budget when we're putting money towards entities that generate surplus. And it's awful hard to see the lack of funding for our historic society. I don't think that that's going to be viable if we continue to give them a 0% increase. And so those are a couple areas where I can't support it as it is right now. But I'm encouraged that we're moving in the right direction in a lot of different ways. And I would strongly urge my peers to continue to look at 212 as an opportunity to accelerate our tax base and grow more so that we can continue to provide great services.
Anybody else? Commissioner Anderson.
Dave, Mary Kay, all the division directors. I want to say huge thank you for this budget and getting us. First of all, big thing is setting expectations on the FTE requests. I think that saved a lot of time, effort, and energy, and being clear on what we can and cannot do. So thank you for sending that note early on. And thank you for the change in the budget hearings so that all commissioners can participate. While those were not televised, they were open meetings and public could attend. And I think personally, as a commissioner, it gave me a bigger picture on what's happening in each individual budget, and I appreciated that and hope that can continue. Mainly, I want to give creativity in solving this problem. I know Director Goodwin was given a huge task on how to manage the lion's share of those unfunded mandates. And I know you have a patchwork quilt of funding, and it's super complicated, probably the most complicated budget in the entire county. So thank you for trying to come up with a solution that minimizes that cost onto taxpayers. And we're all holding our breath as to what's going to happen in the future and what other unfunded mandates might come our way and what those numbers will be. I fear the day that we're no longer able to pull a rabbit out of our hat and figure out how to minimize the costs of these. The primary costs related to the increase in this budget is the increase of workforce costs and our increased demand of services. That's the bottom line. The cost shifts continue to exacerbate our continuing costs, and that's where we're at. We live in a community that wants a DMV. We live in a community that wants to continue to see the high quality services that they've always seen, and we need to kind of continue to ask the questions of how much is too much and continue to push back on that. I think this, while it's not ideal, it's where we're at right now and a realistic number, knowing that this is the highest this levy can be and it could still go down by December when we have more information.
Okay, anybody else? Commissioner Payne?
Yeah, I'm getting my notes and questions ready here, Mr. Chair, when I can start. Definitely, we are in the service business. I think Dave and Dave both mentioned that, and I think it's something that we're going to continue to do at the county level. We talked about the fiscal sustainability with ongoing the base funding, and that strategically with the one-time strategy that we've been using, I still continue, that's hard to believe that that's very critical in what we do, and just definitely keep the eye on the ball. Hopefully in 2028, when we come back and try to remember that, things are as rosy as we're projecting them to be. And then the license centers, we'll have to continue to make that one of our legislative priorities. If we can continue to push back on that increase of the fees, because that's something that basically they're holding our heads under the water and say, here counties, you do all these tasks, and we're gonna take the easy fees and not have any expense, so we'll hopefully continue to push back on all of that. The library usage, with why build new libraries if usage is down? Commissioner Uterman had made that statement, so why are we building new libraries? And that's something, maybe a question for the city of Chaska. They're moving forward in that process. And just for the presentation, Dave, on page 25, I just kind of chuckled. That's an old image of Laconia Regional Park. You got the old ballroom in there, maybe.
Oh,
Maybe
need to update that one,
that
Mr. Chair.
that picture. And then Three River Parks, we had that discussion. That's going to be more discussion for us to definitely go forward. We talked about, excuse me, HHS, and we continue to get those allocations later and later, and how that impacts us. We can talk about the budget and the increases, and that's such a large number, and it really concerns me on the state's responsibility to be able to delay those payments to us, and here we sit. And I think that's gonna get worse. And we'll just have to definitely adjust of all of those allocations and those delays and the mandates, et cetera. And just my final, there might be another one in here, Mr. Chair, but you talked about the debt service and the capital outlay. Overall, with our triple bond rating and the debt service that we have today is so minor and minuscule compared to school districts. And you look back at 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, I think what the county and the county staff, Dave and your team, and Mary Kay, as we manage that debt service, we've done a heck of a job managing the county debt service. Just with my banking perspective and talking about debt service every day, it's incredible where we are, and that's just one of the good things, and that is a sign of the commissioners before us. It's the sign of Commissioners Lynch and Workman of all the work that they've done with the staff help and with Administrative Hemsey to control that debt service. I think that's just a huge win-win. And just a comment on Commissioners Uterman, that $50 billion revenue coming out of Highway 212. That's a phenomenal number, and to try to put your arms around that, but at what cost? Is that a cost to the county that's gonna build industrial parks in the various townships? Or is that a cost to the city of Chaska, for example, that's purchased the Big Woods Industrial Park? 36 acres where the new or Amazon Center's going. That's an investment that the city of Chaska has taken based on the improvements to Highway 212 from Eden Prairie to Carver. That was a huge investment that the county was part of to make that happen. And now the county helped with investment from Carver to Cologne, and now from Cologne to NYA, and the investments that the city of NYA have done in their industrial park. So let that revenue come that way. So how is that revenue gonna come, and but at what cost? Is that more of a county's cost to help build those industrial parks, for that example? Is it more of a county cost to help with the sewer and water systems in the city of Cologne, in the city of NYA? There's needs there. So more conversations coming, and the doubling of the county taxes. If we're already doubling the county taxes every year, or every 8 years, well then, the county must be doing something wrong. But if we want to continue to help and help and help and help, well, our taxes are going to go up. So what's the compromise, and what's the process? We go through this process every year, and it by far is getting challenging, or more and more challenging every year. But we definitely, I feel, are doing a great job in trying to keep the impact as low as possible, and to continue to keep our head above the water and not go to a 2% tax increase when it's going to cost us 20% 3 years down the road. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Commissioner Lynch?
Dave mentioned this is a very difficult budget, and I think it really, really is, because we're still waiting for social services numbers that we should have had, and Heather says in May. There's a prayer I always pray. It's, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. And all I can control is what I can control. We control the county budget and what the county does, but we don't control the federal and the state.
Or the city.
We make, or the cities, we make agreements to rebuild a state road, and we apply for the grants, we get all the agreements done, we build the road, and then they delay the payments to us. It's unbelievable to me. I think that we do a really great job, and we've been budgeting for our 600 building and the remodel in here, putting aside the 450 every year is doing a wonderful job. But there's so many invariables that are tossed at us. One was the act. I thought that was sold as that was going to be budget neutral. And yet it looks like it's going to cost us 1.35 million in 1 year. And just arbitrarily, like the targeted case management, where without an agreement, the state just makes a decision and cuts us 340,000. It's unbelievable to me. And no, I don't like to support this, and I really hate the surcharges, but I will support this next week.
Okay, thank you. I think I've made enough comments. I'll make some more next week. So anybody doesn't have any